Okay, Okay, everyone, want to grab our seats? We're at 8:30 p.m. Let's grab some seats and wrap it up. We're getting us on the road here. Quick announcement. I know Brian wanted to announce this, but our hoodies, special tonight, $20. They're free with a $20 donation. What is it? T-shirts are free with a $7 donation. Anyway, we'll have some fun with it. Brian, come on up here. Let's welcome Brian and go to chair.
Good evening. My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 in Doylestown, PA. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
Greg, alcoholic, first time here.
Welcome, Greg.
Mike, alcoholic, addict.
Mike, welcome.
Ryan, alcoholic, first time here.
Ryan, welcome.
And Chris, alcoholic.
Chris, welcome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise their hand. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purpose of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them, put the donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, please see me or any home group member after the meeting. They are available free of charge. I would like to welcome Nick up to read the preamble.
My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Yay, preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, and does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And we have Andrew to come up and read the 12 steps.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrew and I'm an alcoholic. And these are the 12 steps of recovery. Number 1, we admitted we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. Number 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Number 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only knowledge for His knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Another quick announcement. The Conscious Contact group of Doylestown has a YouTube page. So we have speakers from past on that YouTube page. It would be Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. The 7 tradition, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. I would like to introduce the speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact group, Alan from Los Angeles, California. Please help me welcome Alan.
Well, good evening. So somebody else canceled tonight. You guys have heard that, right? And Ron gave a call, first to air traffic control, and said, could you divert Dr. Berger's plane and get it to land in Doylestown so he can speak at the meeting? You know, Ron, your powers go beyond our imagination. No, I'm just kidding. So obviously. My name's Alan. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I just recently relocated to Doylestown from Westlake Village, California. My wife was aggressively recruited by Johnson & Johnson to come out to help bring to market a new cancer treatment. So they gave her an offer that was hard to refuse, and since I'm working virtually now, so we just moved. We're living over on Mechanicsville and Aquatone. So I'm so glad to be a part of this area and hope to be a part of your group as I'm out here. My journey in the program started 5 decades ago. So this past summer I celebrated 50 years of recovery. Thank you. I could probably stand up here for the next couple days and talk to you about the experiences because it's been unbelievable journey, right? I mean, how do you get here from there? Well, I'm going to give you a few snapshots of what that means for me. But what I really want to focus on in my talk with you tonight is something that I've really been paying attention to the last 30 years of my recovery, and that's emotional sobriety. And I really want to address that with you tonight because I can't tell you what a difference it's made in my program and in how I live my life today. I truly believe that this is Bill Wilson's 4th legacy to us. You know, Dr. Bob and Bill left us the steps, right? The wonderful traditions, the General Service Office. But Bill's understanding and insights into emotional sobriety, I believe, is the 4th legacy for our program. And it's a phenomenal thing. And when you hear me talk about it, I hope it excites you as much as it excites me. You see, if I were to summarize what emotional sobriety is in a few words, it's personal freedom. Personal freedom. Now, I never knew what that looked like. I never felt that kind of freedom. The only time that I felt that freedom is when I got drunk or when I got high. I'm sure that was true for you, right? At that moment in time when I was drinking, it was okay for me to be who I was. I didn't want to be anybody else. You know, I was just who I was. But it was only when I was drinking or getting high. Because once I wasn't drinking or getting high, then I had to deal with who I was. And that was very problematic for so many different reasons. I didn't like myself. Today I would even say the word was stronger than that. I despised myself. I hated myself. I didn't want to be who I was. I wanted to be someone else. And I thought if I was someone else that didn't feel all these things that I felt, that didn't have these thoughts that I had, that I would be okay. So how do you build a life where you can be okay when it's based on rejection of who I am or who we are? Well, you can't. It's an impossibility. You see, I had all kinds of emotions like feelings of insecurity, inadequacy, anxiety, depression, grief. I didn't know how to cope with any of those things. But God, when I took a drink, magic eraser, right? I was okay. Didn't matter I was feeling those things. So let me give you a little snapshot. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, northwest side. My dad was a mechanical engineer. My mom, Italian, 100% Italian woman, was stay-at-home mom with a big pot of pasta on all the time, and the door open, anybody could come to the house and sit down and have a cup of coffee with her, and she'd find out their life story and then tell her hers. That's the kind of house we had. My dad was a great guy. He loved being a father. I feel very, very fortunate to have a man in my life that really wanted me and wanted my siblings as well. But at 38 years old, something happened that was to turn my life upside down. He got diagnosed with multiple myeloma. Now, that's the cancer my wife is working on, by the way, folks. She is, how does that happen? Is that a God shot or what, right? She's on the way of now bringing to market something that looks like it might be a cure for the cancer that killed my father when he was 39. Now, back at 38, I was 10 years old. I was 8 years old. And then when he was 39, I was 9. His cancer started getting really bad. In 1963, he died from his cancer. So I was 11 years old. And I didn't know how to deal with that loss. They say when you are really connected to someone and someone dies in our life, that a part of you dies, right? And the meaning of life changes so substantially. I didn't know what to make of life anymore. But I know what happened inside of me. I made a decision at that point. I was never going to care about anyone or anything to that degree again because I didn't want to hurt like I was hurting. I didn't want to feel that pain. I didn't know how to feel that pain. Now, if you know anything about Italians, there's a year's worth of grief that goes on. I swear my mother painted the walls black. She wore black every day. She was into her grief. God bless her. This was the love of her life. My grandfather, this was his only son, his only child. So when I would spend time with my grandfather, you know what he would say to me? You're not supposed to bury your son. Your son is supposed to bury you. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but what I was developing, my worldview had in it a lot of supposed tos. You know what those are, right? How things should be, how life is supposed to be. And what I saw was that everybody had this set of expectations about how life was supposed to look. And if life didn't comply or adhere to those expectations, you were devastated. You didn't know what to do. My mom fell into an incredible state of grief. So much so, and so did my grandfather, not one adult in my universe asked me how I was doing with losing my dad. I look back at that and it's a mind blower, isn't it? My God. Nobody asked my sister or my other two brothers. It's like we were invisible. But nor did I go to anybody and reach out and say, I'm devastated. I need to talk about this. I don't know how to make sense of losing this man. I was hoping that he'd be there and guide me through high school and figuring out all these things and, how to go ask Susie Belinsky out for a date and stuff like that. I wanted him around for those things. Well, he wasn't. It was a very, very, very sad time in my life. But I didn't feel any of it. That's my point. I didn't want to. There was something in me that just avoided that pain. It was phobic. I was phobic. I didn't want to feel that pain. I didn't want to deal with it. I shut myself down. Today I look back, they call that dissociation. I dissociated from all of those feelings. But while I cut those off, they don't go away when you cut something off. When we go through a trauma, you can push it to the side, but if you don't deal with it, it's still there. All the feelings are there. I just wasn't dealing with them. So now, I'm 12 years old. I'm hanging out at O'Bean School down the block. The cool guys hang out in the front of the school at Robert Square Park. And I was the wannabe cool guys. They hang out behind the school. And one of the cool guys came behind the school with a 6-pack of old-style beer. And it was one of those hot, humid days in Chicago. And he pulls it out of the cooler and he says, "Have one of these." I said, I wanted to be liked, right? I wanted to be a part of that group. Of course I was going to drink it. But then something happened. And I say this all the time. I don't know if I was born an alcoholic. The minute I took that first drink, an alcoholic was born. I was gone. I was hooked. People talk about that with heroin. I didn't need to use heroin. Alcohol did that for me. It connected me. I felt alive. Remember, I shut myself down. Now I was alive for that moment. And if one was going to be good, more was going to be better. And I was off to the races, baby. Right? Off to races. 12 years old, teenage alcoholic, blackouts once or twice a week. Pretty soon my whole life became centered around what am I going to do? How am I going to get alcohol today? It interfered with going to school. At 16 years, I dropped out of high school, Carl Schurz High School. They actually were going to throw me out because I wasn't going to school. What was I doing? I was finding out whose parents were home. And I had a few buddies I was drinking with. We'd go over to their house and do what? We'd empty out their liquor cabinet. Replace the liquor with, some food dye and stuff like that. Find somebody else's house. So I drop out of high school. And it's 16, you have to go get a job because you're going to continuation school, and I take some job. And now I'm selling women's shoes at Mailing Shoe Store, making $1.25 an hour. And I'm still having to borrow or steal money from my mother because my drinking is costing more than I'm earning. That's how much alcohol I was consuming at the age of 16 years old. And I had a sense that my life wasn't going anywhere, right? That something was wrong. That gnawing sense inside that this is not sustainable, right? This is the way I'm living. And so I decided I had to do something to make a change. Well, my father served in World War II. He was a recipient of a Bronze Star. And I thought, I'll go in the armed forces. Now, there was something in me that decided to pick the Marine Corps instead of the Army. Like he was in the Army, and I decided to be one of the few that proud the Marines. Because I thought inside, well, maybe this could be it, right? This could turn my life around. Now, at 17 years old, so this is back in 1969, at 17, your parent, at that time, my mother, had to sign the papers for me to go in the Marine Corps. She couldn't wait to sign the papers. She didn't know what the hell to do with me. My God. I'm blacking out. I'm being poured on the front porch, either shitting in my pants or urinating all over myself. My life was out of control. I was completely out of control. So when I went home and I said, I talked to the recruiter, I'm going, she goes, "Thank God my prayers have been answered." That's what she said. Thank God. So here I go, off to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot. I'm a Hollywood Marine in San Diego. And they have a way. The Marine Corps knows what they're doing. They put you on a plane so you get there and you meet the DI at about 2 a.m. So you're sleepy, you're disoriented. And then, they pick you up at San Diego Airport and drive you over to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, and this guy gets on and he starts yelling. And I swear to God, he yelled for 16 weeks in a row. Didn't stop for 16 weeks. And I'm asking myself, what did I get myself into? Do you ever have that thought that seemed like a good idea at the time? Right? I would not recommend boot camp as a detoxification program. But the great thing was, I didn't know if I was shaken because of my lack of alcohol or because this guy was in my face and I was scared to death of him, right? So somehow, putting one foot in front of the other, I got through, boot camp. I went into my MOS, but the first year, every Marine is first an infantryman, right, a rifleman. So we go to advanced infantry training regiment, and what happens is you get liberty. You get to go out on the town on the weekends, and what happens the first time I go out of town, what goes on? Blackout drunk again. I'm an alcoholic. That's what my disease looks like. I drink and I black out. I don't know what's going to happen. I lose control. Not every time, but a good portion of the time, especially at that point in my life. So, the whole thing is starting again. It's going all over again. I can give you stories and stories about it. But what happens is that when I'm 18 years old, I decide to volunteer to go to Vietnam. My dad served, and he was in combat, and I wanted to go to combat, so now I head off to Vietnam at 18 years old. Now, I look back, and I have 4 children. I have a boy who is 18 years old, and I look at him, and I just can't imagine him being in combat at 18. There's something that just doesn't fit about the consciousness that you have. But I'm in Vietnam at 18, and I'm in Da Nang City, and we experienced combat there. But now I get introduced to drugs other than alcohol, right? And now that starts. The same response. I had the same. I'm an addict. If one's good, more is going to be better. And now I'm off and running with that whole thing. Come back from Vietnam, and I go home for a 30-day liberty. My last duty station is on the island of Oahu in Hawaii, right? What a beautiful place to have my last duty station. So I go home, I'm partying for 30 days. I'm burned out, literally. The day starts out with apple juice and vodka. And then probably at 2 or 3 in the morning it finishes up and I get up at 7 or 8 o'clock and we start partying all over again. That's just what my life looked like. So at the end of my 30 days, I am fried. Hard partying for 30 days. My buddies send me off. They take me to O'Hare Airport, and they're giving me a few hits of acid to take with me, a few joints, some speed. Say, keep the party going, man. You're going to Hawaii. It's going to be great there. And of course, I'm all for it. I got this stuff in my pocket. I've got good friends. And I get to Los Angeles, and I didn't realize we'd have to change airplanes. And I also didn't realize that in 1971, there were all of these international hijackings taking place. And so they had security, not where we see it, right, when you go up into the airport. It was right at the gate. And they had this thing around the gate, and they were checking everybody's bag and everybody's pockets and stuff before they get in. And I got these drugs in my pocket. So I must have looked incredibly paranoid, right? I was probably doing one of these things, right? You know how that goes. So I leave the line, and now, in a way, I am so grateful for how stupid I was. And you're going to see why in a minute. Usually I'm not grateful for that. But in this case, it turned out to be my God shot in life. So I decide I'm going to get busted. I can figure that part out. I wasn't that stupid. And I said, I got to get rid of this stuff because they're going to get me. I look around, and back in 71, you could smoke in the airport. And they had ashtrays with sand inside of them. Now, I just came from Vietnam. My first duty station there was at the beach. We were on the beach, and we hit the drugs we bought in the sand. And I saw these ashtrays, and I said, you know what? I'm going to mosey up to an ashtray, move a little sand aside, bury some of these drugs, and move on to the next one. Well, that's exactly what I did. And they saw me exactly do what I did, and they followed me, and they dug up the drugs I was burying in every one of these about 6 ashtrays that I hit. Go through the line, I think I'm free, right? Man, Berger, you did it again, you figured this out. Go through the line, and 2 of the Los Angeles police are standing there and say, Marine, come with us. take me in the back room, put the drugs on the table, and I go, oh shit, here goes. Well, we start talking. One of the Marines, or one of the police officers, was an MP at China Beach, where I was stationed at the same time I was stationed in Vietnam. And he said, look, because we were at the same place, I'm not going to arrest you here, but what I'm going to do, I'm calling your commanding officer, and I'm telling him what's happened here, and, you're going to get in trouble when you get over there. So I get on the plane. What's it, 4 or 5 hour plane ride? I'm fantasizing there's going to be, military police standing there for me. I'm going to be arrested. They're going to throw me in the brig that night. I get off the plane and nobody's there. I'm looking all around. Where are those guys? So now, and I know you've done this too, whenever I got in trouble, I quickly hatched a scheme to try to get out of it. So what could I do to minimize the harm that I've just created, right? How could I minimize the consequences that I was going to experience? I decided the best thing to do is turn myself in and say I needed help. The Marine Corps had a zero-tolerance drug policy. I'd be on the plane in a few days, back to Chicago, get Hendrix back on, put the doors on, and let's party, baby. Come on. This Marine Corps thing, I was into peace and love, man. Forget this combat anymore. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I do that. I turn myself into Top the next day. Hey, Top, I've got a drug problem. And he starts to shuffle papers on his desk. I'm going, I just told the guy I got a drug problem. He goes, Berger, you're one lucky Marine. It's like, what is he saying this for? He says, 3 days ago, the Marine Corps started a drug exemption program. Because so many, you can't plan this stuff, kid. So many of you guys were coming back from Vietnam with a problem, and we were discharging you and sending the problem back to the community. The Marine Corps felt that they had a responsibility, so we've started a rehabilitation program. In fact, you're going over there right now, Berger. I was the 3rd Marine admitted into the program, the 3rd day the program existed. Right, 3 is a lucky number for me. Very lucky number. Now, had I been arrested in LA, what would have happened? That would have never gone down, would it? Right? Had that MP, that guy that was a former MP, now a police officer, he set things in motion for me to go into this program. I'm forever grateful for that guy. Forever grateful. They had no idea what they were doing. The program's 3 days old. They had a captain in charge who had a bachelor's degree in psychology. I've got a bachelor's degree in psychology and a lot more. I know that you know nothing with a bachelor's degree in psychology. And he's running this program. I'm going to counseling sessions with him saying, yes, sir, no, sir. That's not conducive to a good rapport in a counseling session. They had no idea what they were doing to help us. But they knew it. They had humility. And they turned to the AA community outside the base. And there just happened to be a real strong and vibrant AA community with a lot of young people. There was a woman over there that was like the Pied Piper of young people. Her name was Flo Bird. And she was bringing these people into the program and helping them discover this way of life. And one of them was, his name is Tom McCall. And they invited Tom to come in and start a discussion session, a rap group is what it was called, about recovery on Tuesday nights. And it wasn't to come in and talk about, the dangers of drugs and all that other stuff. That he came in to talk about what recovery looked like. What was possible? If you had this disease, what were the possibilities in terms of living a life without drinking or using other drugs and alcohol? So I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday in July. Tom comes to the base. Now you got to picture this. There's 30 of us combat Vietnam Marines in our combat fatigues, and this hippie walks in. He's got long hair. He's got his John Lennon glasses on, his standard issue, Birkenstock sandals in Hawaii, and khaki pants. And, we're looking at this. What's this guy going to say to us? Well, he had a lot to say to us. Because after he started to talk, we were mesmerized. I was mesmerized. Because what I saw in Tom, in fact, I was just talking to him before the meeting started. I missed the first picture because of it. He called me a couple minutes before I was coming on today to check in with me. I was concerned, he lives in Hawaii, about the flooding and stuff, if he was okay, and so I was glad to hear from him. But what happened is I experienced, for the first time in my life, somebody who spoke from their heart. There were no games. He wasn't playing any games. He had a personal freedom from all of the things that I didn't know how to deal with. He could talk freely about his insecurities. He could talk freely about his inadequacies, about his depression, about not knowing, his ignorance. Tom was okay being Tom. He was okay at talking about where he wasn't okay. He was even okay with not being okay. Well, I didn't know how to get to okay without being okay. If I wasn't okay, I didn't want you to know that. But he was okay with talking about not being okay. Now, I can't tell you what that meant to me. That didn't seem like a possibility in life. To talk about being afraid? I was a U.S. Marine. Are you kidding me? I wasn't going to own that to anyone. That day, I saw the freedom that I so longed for my whole life. That personal freedom. And that freedom created an unbelievable authenticity that blew my mind. Something inside of me that night came alive. I got so excited about the possibilities. In fact, the way I describe recovery today is the discovery of possibilities, new possibilities in our life. And that's what happened. I was excited. I was turned on. Now, my recovery was based on the possibilities, not about being afraid of what was going to happen. Trust me, that kind of motivation doesn't last real long. Right? If you got a hole in your roof and it's raining out, you want to fix the hole in your roof. But if you live in California, you got 360 days a year, you don't call the damn roofer to fix the hole because it's sunny outside. So pain can get us started well, but it's got to transfer into this excitement of new possibilities in our life. And that happened for me. I got so excited what I saw going on. There was a power, a force here that I didn't see anywhere else in life. People becoming what they could be. People dealing with things. People addressing their problems, not running away from them. People trying to figure out how to make this life work. I was hooked. I went up to him afterwards and I said, "How did that happen?" He said, "Stick close, I'll show you." We started working the steps. Right away. And I started to get a vision. Now, of course, it's my first year, right? But I started to see that there was a new possibility that existed for me. Tom is still my sponsor today. After 50 years. I've had one sponsor for 50 years. Isn't that something? I got to go back to Hawaii several years ago. He's about 3 years ahead of me. He's got 53 years clean and sober today. And I got to go back there and celebrate his 50th birthday at Kailua, the park across from the Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station, where we spent a lot of time sitting and talking about recovery. What a gift that was. And he's had an amazing life, He's carried the message everywhere. A lot of his work is in Narcotics Anonymous now, but just tell you one real quick story because it just touched me so much. He was on the board of trustees for 16 years. And part of what they do, and he still did, even after his terms were up, is they go to different parts of the world and teach people how to start meetings, right? We do that in Alcoholics Anonymous as well, these meeting workshops where you teach people how to run a meeting, how to create a meeting and stuff like that. Well, he and 3 other members from the World Service Organization were invited to go to Iran. And what happens often is when people come from the World Service Office, it's a big deal, right? I mean, this is a big thing. So it's like Bill Wilson coming out from the GSO, right? These people are running, are the group that's organizing and running what's going on in Narcotics Anonymous. So they're often invited to speak. So they told them, we've got a meeting set up for you to speak at. And usually there's 200, 300, 400 people at the meeting. They take him to the soccer stadium. He walks in. There's 15,000 people at this meeting. Men are on one side, women on the other side because of Islamic law, right? And so he's up there sharing his story, and through an interpreter. He doesn't speak Farsi. And halfway through his talk, he hears this chanting going on, this rhythmic chanting. And their interpreter says, "Do you know what they're chanting?" He goes, "No." He goes, "They're chanting, 'May God never take your recovery from you. May God never take your recovery from you.'" It touches me so much. They felt the power of this program. And I felt that in my life, too. As you can hear, when I talk about him, I just, I love him. I love him to death. So one of the things I start to see as I start to do this work is I realize that the alcohol and other drugs were only a symptom of my problems. I was a mess. I screwed up my life really good, a lot in a very short period of time. And it started well before I picked up the drink. It started when I started to get all these ideas about what was supposed to be. You see, I now see that the way that things were in my head is I'm okay if. That's how I live my life. I'm okay if things went the way that I wanted them to go. I was okay if you liked me. I was okay if I got that job. I was okay if fill in the blank. My sense of self was completely based was other validated existence. I was completely emotionally dependent on everything. And so, when something would happen where somebody would say, "God, that doesn't look like a big deal," it was a big deal for me. It was always a big deal for me because I made everything about me. If you said something, and you said even something mean to me, I couldn't separate myself from you. I would say, "How dare you talk to me that way? Don't you know who you're talking to?" I would take it personally. I took everything personally. I was a nuclear reactor to everything that was going on. You poke me anyway, man, I'm reacting. There goes Al, the reactor. Well, how do you keep any peace of mind or serenity if my sense of well-being was based on what you were doing or not doing? And of course, none of you guys read the damn script. What, right? Was the actor that was trying to be the director? You guys remember that part in the book? Oh my God. And I wouldn't hesitate to tell you what you were doing wrong. But could I see that my whole life was based on this big lie that says I'm okay if? That meant I had to control all the conditions and people surrounding me, as Bill said when he wrote this letter back in 1956 that was published in the 58 Grapevine. I found that I had to take the possession and control of those people and conditions surrounding me because of my absolute dependence. I was that king baby that they talked about. Wanted everything my way. I didn't realize that my problem was my emotional immaturity. I was certain my problem was you. If you would just be a better person, I'd be okay. Of course, you've got your own stuff going on. Today I realize nothing you do is, personal. You're not doing it to me, you're just doing it. You're behaving the way you behave because of who you are. I behave the way I am, behave because of who I am. has nothing to do with me. What you feel has nothing to do with me. Those are your feelings. My feelings are my feelings. They have nothing to do with you. If I think you hurt me, it's only because it reminds me of some idea I have about what's supposed to go on. You're not hurting me, I hurt me. You see, what I started to see, that there was a possibility of being okay even if. You guys get that? See, that's what emotional sobriety is. It's I'm okay even if. Ron's having a bad day and he calls me up and he's pissy with me. That's not me. That's Ron's having a bad day. If I don't take it personally, I might be able to be there, man. I say, God, man, you sound like you're having a bad day. Can I talk to you? I can have some compassion. But if I take it personally, what am I going to say? Hey, Ron, Jesus Christ, that's not a way to treat a fellow member of the program. Are you kidding me? Where's your serenity? Make him feel bad about what's going on. Well, that's not going to help anything. Shame him so that he does what I want to do. See, that's how tricky I can get. I can shame you and tell you you're doing something wrong and you should do it different, not because I really care about you, but because I want you to do what I want you to do. That's the degree that I can manipulate. And trust me, I've got a doctorate in clinical psychology. Watch out. My poor wife. Oh, my poor wife. She has to deal with that shit all the time. But she's up to it now, man. We've done a lot of therapy together, so she doesn't let me get away with that crap. And I'm grateful for that most of the time. Not when it's happening. That's about an hour later, by the way. But that was an incredible revelation. That I can be okay even if things don't go my way. That my well-being is not dependent on what's going on around me. What is it dependent on? Having a right spiritual condition. Having a set of attitudes and ideas that are based on reality, not based on the illusions that I created about how life was supposed to be. You see, my life could never work when I fantasized that life had to be a certain way other than it was for me to be okay. Another way of thinking about emotional sobriety, it's about getting aligned with the reality of what's happening in your life. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it has to do with accepting it as it is and learning to cope with it. Life is what it is. It's how we cope with it that counts. It's not going to be what you want it to be. That is the key that unlocked the personal freedom that I experience sometimes today. It's not all the time. Emotional sobriety is a process. It's not a state that you get in and you just stay there all the time. It's a place that I get to visit sometimes now. And I get to enjoy that. So, let me give you... What time do I stop at, Ron? I always forget these things. What time? 8:35. Okay, good. So I have time to tell you this story. Because I always like to make this practical, right? Because I'm kind of giving you a bunch of different ideas. But let me bring this down to some reality. 9 years ago, my wife and I got pregnant. It was going to be her first child. It would be my third. And she was working on her postdoc at UCLA. She's a cancer biologist, and she had finished her doctorate degree at Vanderbilt University, where we met, and she was working on her now postdoc at UCLA. And so we decided to use the midwife group at UCLA, because they're a great group, and we wanted to have this child naturally and stuff like that. Well, but when you sign up for UCLA, you sign up for UCLA, and they've got a lot of money and a lot of grants, and so they want to do a lot of genetic testing. Because the idea is, and it's a good idea, that if there's a problem, they want to anticipate it so they can mobilize the resources for you beforehand, get you the counseling you need, get your head set around what to expect so you can deal with it. You see, thank God, UCLA was dealing with life as it is, not as anybody fantasized it is. And so they were trying to align themselves with reality. So she goes in and she gives a bunch of blood. Well, it is a little humbling because if there's nothing wrong with her genes, mine don't matter. Kind of puts guys in the right spot, doesn't it? It totally doesn't matter. If I've got some gene anomalies and stuff like that, if she doesn't have any, doesn't matter what's going on with me. So we're going to well baby visits. It takes a while for them to process this stuff. Probably in month 4, we leave the well baby visit. I'm driving to my office in Hermosa Beach, and she gets a call from the nurse, the midwife, and says, "I'm sorry, we forgot to go over some results from your genetic testing. Can you come back?" And she says, "Okay." So she goes back, and the midwife sits her down and says, "Well, I've got some bad news for you. There's no other way to say it to you. You tested positive for this gene, that if your husband also has it, your child will have a 25% chance of being born with spinal muscular atrophy." Now she goes, "Here's what that means for you and your baby and your husband. If it's the severest case, your child will live for 1.5 years. If you're so lucky to get a mild case of this, children don't live over the age of 14. So, wrap your head around that for a minute, right? She's told that. She's devastated. My God. She's crying, she's scared, she gets anxious. My God, what are we going to do? She calls me up. I can hardly talk to her because she's so, devastated by what's going on. I turn around, cancel my clients for the day, go back to UCLA and start to talk to her about it and find out now that I've got to give blood. And so she's telling me about this. I'm crying. We're crying together about this whole thing. I go and I give my blood. It's going to take 6 weeks to get the results. We're not going to know for 6 weeks. We're going to be in limbo for 6 weeks. So we leave UCLA. She can't go to the lab. I can't go back to the office because you can't think about anything else when something like this happens, right? It's all consuming. And what they say is that the smarter you are, the more you can catastrophize in terms of what's going to happen. Right? So we're projecting all of these catastrophes into our life. I'm seeing that, my practice is closed. I'm at the hospital all the time. My head's going. And then it starts to do crazy stuff like, well, God's finally punishing me. Right? All the crap I've done and all the things I've done wrong, I'm being paid back for that now. This is part of the price you pay, right? My head goes in crazy places like this. I'm punishing God. No wonder why I'm afraid of God, right? You've got that kind of an idea of God here. So I don't know how to deal with this. I'm filled with anxiety. I hate anxiety. I don't know how you guys experience it, but I hate it. It's like, my skin is crawling. I just want to get out of myself. I call my sponsor. I call my friends. I get incredible support, but it's not taking the anxiety away. She's experiencing the same thing. We go in and out of crying, in and out of pacing, can't eat. You guys felt that before, right? Well, I kept saying to myself, my God, how can I get a handle on this stuff? By the way, I was thinking, this is why I drink and use, by the way, to deal with shit like this, right? Because, a couple drinks and at least for a moment, that's all gone, right? But I never had that thought, thank God. I feel very, very grateful that the desire to drink and use was lifted very early on. I call it God's grace. I was one of those people that it was just taken away from me. So I kept saying to myself, well, how can I get my head wrapped around this thing? I intuitively knew that what I was doing, but I couldn't have articulated it was my dependency. It was once again the old life should look like this. This is what was supposed to happen. I was supposed to somehow have a healthy child. Now, if you would have told me, did you have that expectation? I couldn't have told you that going into the whole deal. But that expectation was really strongly there, that this wasn't supposed to be happening to me. I claim this special status, right? That's that, egomaniac with an inferiority complex that we all have, right? this special status that life shouldn't happen to me like it happens to everybody else. I'm special. Don't you know that? Yeah, right. No, life happens. And I had to deal with that. I went to sleep that night, or tried to go to sleep. I never sleep well with anxiety. I don't know about you guys, but you toss and turn and you fall in and out of sleep all night long, right? That's what goes on, and you go back and forth and stuff like that, tossing and turning. Sometimes, somebody said that God speaks to us through our unconscious, especially when we sleep and we have dreams. And something came to me that night, and when I woke up, I knew what the matter was. I said, I'm letting this possibility, that's not even a reality yet, by the way. You guys didn't lose sight of that, did you? I'm living in the future completely. Don't even know if I have this thing or not, and I've already got myself having it and in the hospital. So that's what I do to get myself anxious. I know how to create anxiety. Just go ahead and project a catastrophe into the future and pretend it's real. That's what I did. When I woke up, I realized that that's what I was doing. And I said to myself, I got this thing all backwards. Life doesn't have to be what I think it needs to be. I have to deal with it as it is. And how do I want to deal with this? I knew in my heart I wanted to be a dad. I love being a father. It's one of the best things I've done in my life. I love children. And I love being a part of their lives. That was unquestionable in me. And I said to myself, if God only gives me Madeline for a year and a half, I'm going to love this big child for a lifetime in a year and a half. And if God is so generous to give her to me for 14 years, I will enjoy every one of those days in that 14 years, and I will love her a lifetime in 14 years. The minute I said that to myself and out loud to my wife, no more anxiety. It was over. When I shared it with my wife, it was like I handed her a bar of Xanax. She wasn't anxious anymore. She had no anxiety. It was gone. Because I decided I will deal with whatever it is that I have to deal with it, and I can find a way to deal with it and be okay, because I don't need life to be a certain way to be okay. I need to be a certain way to be okay with God's help. Love was the answer. Then I had the second insight that even carried this farther. I know, as a psychologist, that her reality will be defined through how we treat her. She won't know the possibilities of her existence that I know because of my experience. And if that's going to be her life, she'll have the best life she can have given the possibilities that exist for her. My goodness. That's freedom. You guys see it? That's what freedom looks like. It's not what's happening to me. It's not what went down that's going to make me feel good or bad. It was how I dealt with it. How I coped with it. The meaning I was able to find in it that was beyond the dependency. Bill calls emotional sobriety true independence of spirit. Listen to that phrase. True independence of spirit. None of this stuff needs to mean anything to you unless you make it. And if you're reacting to somebody else, you're reacting. It's not what they're doing, it's what you're doing. We got to get that. Our problem isn't out there, it's here. It's the meaning we're giving to the situation. It's how we're looking at it. It's what we're doing to cope with it. And a lot of times we project it out there hoping that somehow somebody's going to come along and make it better. Because we don't have that faith in ourselves. And I understand that. Why should we? You know, we're king babies and queen babies. We think somebody else is going to fix our life. Emotional sobriety says no one is coming. No one is coming. You're going to need to figure that out with, God of your understanding. That's what's going to happen if you're going to make this thing work. Somebody's not going to come along and make that right. You're going to have to look inside you and start to deal with some of the stuff. Start to deal with some of the things you don't want to face and deal with. Start to deal with some trauma you have that may be interfering with your well-being in your life, or whatever you need to address. Because trauma doesn't create alcoholism. Alcoholism is an independent disease. Yes, some of us have been traumatized, but it's not caused by trauma. Something else is going on here. There's a lot of different forces that are at work with this disease that we suffer from. But these are the thoughts that started to give me some freedom. This is what I call stage 2 recovery, learning how to cope with life, learning how to deal with life, learning how to truly approach an unconditional attitude. Do you see what I mean by that? It's unconditional because it means that my well-being is not based on any conditions about how things are supposed to be. Life is what it is. It's how I cope with it that's going to make the difference. With God's help, with some wisdom in these rooms, with Bill Wilson's gift, his 4th legacy, we have a whole bunch of tools that are called emotional sobriety. And if you haven't started to look at that in your life, do yourself a favor. Bill said in the 12 and 12, which was written in 1950, right? So this is 15 years after the big book was written. He said in the 12 and 12 again, I think at the end of the first paragraph, when he's discussing step 12, he says, if we begin to practice these principles in our daily affairs, that we and those about us begin to achieve emotional sobriety. I've been to a lot of meetings. You know how many times I've heard that stated from the podium? No one says that. The purpose, the goal of this program, yes, physical sobriety has to come first. That's the first step, right? That's that paradoxical miracle that happens. I admit I'm powerless and I find a power that I could never tap into before. But that's it. Now it's about emotional sobriety. All these steps are to help us achieve emotional sobriety. And emotional sobriety is about humility. It's about letting go of these ideas about how things are supposed to be. It's learning to not take things personally. It's learning to surrender your hobbling expectations. That's what this journey is about. When we really embrace recovery from Bill's hope that we achieve emotional sobriety. So I hope, if nothing else, my talk tonight will inspire you. You can look up Bill's letter on the internet. It's there for everyone to look at. There's all kinds of meetings now starting to take place. I can even provide some information for you guys. I started an Emotional Sobriety Anonymous meeting on Thursday nights when COVID hit. And it's on Thursdays. It's 10 p.m. out here. It was 7 p.m. in LA. Now it's 10 p.m. out here. But we get almost 200 people at the meeting from all over the world that come and learn. Right now we're going through the steps and talking about how the steps help achieve emotional sobriety, and all those recordings are on YouTube channel as well if you look up my name. So I hope I've inspired you to start to think about this in your life, and thank you so much for giving me a chance to come and share with you guys tonight and to bring a little emotional sobriety into Doylestown. Let's hear it for Doylestown and emotional sobriety.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm an alcoholic. Let's give Alan another round of applause. A few announcements before we close up. Our speakers come here on their own time and their own expense. It's customary that we form a line after the meeting and thank them. As we know, we have Howard here, who is the best coffee maker in town, the best coffee for miles. As we mentioned earlier, we have the Conscious Contact Speaker Group YouTube page where you can go listen to speakers. We also have a Facebook page where you can see local flyers and international flyers, see lots of meetings that are going on in person and also on Zoom. We have the hoodies. They're $20, they're free with a $20 donation. We also have t-shirts. They are free with a $7 donation. And finally, we do have some sister meetings. We will be back here next Saturday, of course. The meeting's at 8:30. We'll be here at 7 if anyone wants to join us. We have 2 meetings on Monday night. There's a 6 o'clock meeting where we go through the steps 1 through 12. We have a speaker discussion every week. There's an Al-Anon meeting also in this room Monday nights at 7:30. And we have a sister meeting, which is a Big Book meeting that meets over at Salem Thursday nights at 7:30, and we would love to see you there. So for those who would like to join me, we have a nice way of closing. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Go.